Hey everyone, what's up? How's it going? This is Finite MTG, and today we're going to be going over a kind of draft that I don't normally do unless it's on Magic Online, and I'm feeling like, let's just hop into a draft league. So I did a Vintage Cube draft, and it was a team draft this time, so there are going to be 4 packs of 12. I'll be one of 6 players. Each team is a team of 3. And this cube, this vintage cube, belongs to Chris Wulfi, Superwulfi, Boy Sage. These are all names you might know him by. And yeah, without further ado, let's dive into this draft here because it was a sweet one. All right, so pack 1, pick 1. We have a pack that I think is fairly underwhelming for a vintage cube. So there's not anything here that I am like super excited about. Note that we do have a Force of Will here, which is something that a lot of people would be really into. But personally, I feel like that's a pretty committal card. You do need to end up with a lot of blue cards in your deck for it to be particularly good, and even then, it's really just not the kind of effect I enjoy. I'm also not a fan of taking fixing super highly, but that said, I did end up going with this Windswept Heath here, pack 1, pick 1. Just thinking like, I think this is going to be one of those cubes where there are lots of fetchable lands, so hopefully this will give me some nice flexibility to allow me to do whatever it is I need to later. A couple tempting options in the pack could be some of the cheap removal spells as well. I think it's not crazy to first pick like Fatal Push here, for instance. All right, pack 1, pick 2. So this pack I think is considerably stronger. We have cards like Sylvan Library, which is pretty nice, Young Pyromancer. But there's also Rona here, which is another powerful 2-mana card. This one, of course, is new. I don't think this thing is going to let me look at the reverse side, but it's basically a Phyrexian Obliterator, if I remember correctly, 5/5, and bad things happen to your opponents if they deal the damage. So 2 mana for a 1/3 looter seems nice. Some random upside with legendary stuff that I don't expect to come up, but I do like the idea of spending 5 mana and 2 life to just flip it into something pretty powerful in the late game. Alright, pack 1, pick 3 here. We get a card that I think is pretty powerful in Thoughtseize. So Thoughtseize, the power does kind of decrease as the game continues, but it's 1 black mana to just kind of rip apart your opponent's hand. Super good on like turn 1, can make draws and just, early games from your opponent very rough. It can strip your opponent of certain reactive cards, removal spells, counter spells, things like that, even into the late game. So yeah, pretty happy to pick up a Thoughtseize here. And now with a blue card and a black card, we'll see what direction this takes us. All right, pack 1, pick 4. So one of the stronger cards in this pack is going to be Mystic Confluence, in my opinion, but it is another expensive one, and one of the things that I'm trying to prioritize here is having my spells be cheap. So Monastery Mentor, it is cheaper than both of the other spells that I've picked up at this point, but like Monastery Mentor Thoughtseize or Monastery Mentor plus some kind of like blue, permission, that kind of thing. I could see myself having a pretty good like Esper controlling shell with the Mentor at this point, so it seemed like a pick that made sense here. All right, pack 1, pick 5. And so this one, there are a couple cards really that are worth noting. One of them is Skyclave Apparition, but it does have double white, and we did just pick up our first white card. We have a black card that is, cheaper and more of a pull into that color, and a blue card I think that we'd also rather try out than the white card. So double white is going to be pretty undesirable here, whereas Mana Leak, it's a cheap interactive card. It's only got 1 colored pip, and yeah, like I said, I do think the blue card that we have at this point is more enticing than the white card. All right, pack 1, pick 6. So this pack is interesting. There's an Ancient Tomb here, and Ancient Tomb is another one of those, you know, cards that's regarded as pretty powerful. At this point, I'm not sure whether it's going to do very much for me. My colors are kind of all over the place, and I don't think I can afford to take 2 damage a bunch of times. But we do have a Wedding Announcement in this pack, and that's one of those cards that I think is pretty darn strong. Just gives you a lot of value. It's an enchantment, so that can be a tough card type for opponents to interact with. And yeah, I think this is more of a reason to continue into the white, and it does trigger that Monastery Mentor as well. All right, pack 1, pick 7 here. I was kind of thinking that, oh, you know, maybe I shouldn't have passed some of the cheap interactive cards. Note that the Burst Lightning did not wheel, but both of the black removal spells did. The Pylon and the Fatal Push both come back here. And so I'm thinking that it probably doesn't make sense for me to take Pylon, even though I do think it is a powerful card. And that could have been a mistake on my part. I haven't played with it, but it's really hard to go wrong with Fatal Push, especially in an environment like this where I'm prioritizing cheap effects. So yeah, just 1 mana to blow up something cheap, and we also have like the Windswept Heath, for instance, to try to enable Revolt. Alright, pack 1, pick 8. Sylvan Library somehow comes all the way back around. But at this point, after picking up that Fatal Push, I'm a little more interested in the Ophiomancer. I don't want to keep kind of bridging out with my colors, and you know, this is a nice one to pick up and get back here. A little bit sad that Felidar Retreat and Blood Artist both in the pack, as they would kind of work nicely with like a go wide or token strategy, but pretty happy with an Ophiomancer, just a good card. Alright, and then pack 1, pick 9. This is kind of a sad one because, yeah, once again, just a pack with multiple cards that'd be really nice for us. One of which is that Underground Sea, and one of which is the Flicker Wisp. Of course, at this point, we've already passed that Skyclave Apparition, so we're not really looking at double white. So if I'm going to try to make this mana base work with 3 colors, I'm going to have to take Fixing. And although the Flicker Wisp would be really nice, yeah, that Underground Sea is just going to be necessary for us to try to continue here. And then pack 1, pick 10, not too much to say about this one. Escape Shift and Sidisi come around. We're not able to do anything with those. This is a team draft, so maybe I should be hate picking one of them or something like that, but I figure just taking Scrabbling Claws as a card that can matter for me from the sideboard seems to make a lot of sense. And then pack 1, pick 11. So this is where things kind of change, right? We have 2 cards come around with a bunch of pips total, and one of them is Skyclave Apparition. So we already passed this one, did not expect to see it come around here. Probably would have taken that Flicker Wisp if we did expect the Skyclave Apparition to wheel, especially so late here. This is really a sign that white is going to be open for us, but yeah, definitely happy to pick up a Skyclave here, and you know, it seems like the course has shifted, and we'll see where it takes us. And pack 1, pick 12, we get a Temple Garden, which is fetchable off our pack 1, pick 1 of that Windswept Heath, so that could be interesting as well. Alright, pack 2, pick 1 here. So this looks like another pack that's going to be more powerful than the first one that we opened. We've got stuff like a Mana Vault and Urza's Saga. But if you've seen the way that I like to draft in cubes like this, then you know that I really value Smuggler's Copter. It's just such a powerful, efficient threat. Fits a pretty nice slot on the curve as well. And yeah, just going to be very happy to pick that up here. Saga and Mana Vault, powerful as they are, might not actually be very good fits for the deck, whereas Copter is kind of guaranteed to fit well. Alright, pack 2, pick 2 here. So at this point, it really seems like we are not going to be playing as many colors. In terms of the blue, we did get a Rona and we got a Mana Leak. But in terms of the black, we have what? A Thoughtseize, Fatal Push. So pretty interested in picking up some fixing here with a Godless Shrine and Scrubland in the pack. It seems reasonable to take a Scrubland, and who knows, maybe we'll even wheel that Godless Shrine. Alright, pack 2, pick 3. This time, I kind of have an interesting decision point. If I'm going to continue with my black-white plan here, there's a Legion's Landing. But Legion's Landing is not a card I consider to be a super important one or a particularly high pick. So I felt like this was kind of a crossroads, maybe an opportunity to try to give myself a chance to go back into the blue with the Celestial Colonnade. Some fixing, but also kind of an incentive to pick up more fixing, right? So you can activate that ability. So I did take the Colonnade here thinking, maybe I'll just get that Legion's Landing back anyway. We did get that Skyclave very late after all. All right, pack 2, pick 4. This is kind of a tough one. First 2 cards in the pack were pretty appealing to me. Meathook Massacre is not a card I've played with before in cubes like these, but it does seem powerful. The tiebreaker for me in the end was I was thinking that in order to actually kill very many things with Meathook, it seems like you'd have to sink a lot of mana into it, whereas Sarah Paragon's just going to be 4 mana every time. Works really nicely with like fetch lands, for instance, anything that mills cards, and I have been prioritizing cheap spells, so yeah, Sarah Paragon seems like potentially a very powerful one. Pack 2, pick 5, well, at this point, we are kind of thinking it's more likely to end up just black-white rather than having blue. Psychotog, sadly, is not going to be a reason I kind of venture into the blue here. Leyline Binding is kind of interesting, but it seems like more trouble than it's worth at this point. It's not like I'm already in domain stuff or anything like that. And I just passed Meathook Massacre, so happy here to just pick up a Damnation. This one seems like it's going to be cheaper than the Meathook and possibly more desirable for my deck. We'll see. All right, pack 2, pick 6. This one, there are a few goodies. Winds of Abandon, kind of a decent interactive card. Selesnya Sanctuary is kind of an interesting one to see here as well. Makes me wonder if like Fast Bond is going to be in the cube, for instance. It is my first time drafting this cube, so really don't know what's up. Haven't even seen any pieces of power, so not sure if that's something going on either. And of course, if I ask, then it suggests that I haven't opened any, and then that's like giving away info in the team draft and the whole thing. So it's kind of a funny, like almost catch-22 kind of situation. And so Liliana of the Veil here is going to be a nice pickup, especially with that Sarah Paragon. I really want to prioritize powerful permanents I can replay from my graveyard. And yeah, this is a nice 3 mana Planeswalker to recast potentially. Okay, pack 2, pick 7 here. So this was a very powerful pack the first time around. Second time, there's really not too much going on for me. In fact, I would argue that there's really nothing going on for me, but we are going to take Witch of the Moors. This is a super powerful card if you're able to pick up enough life gain enablers. And although I don't think that that's very likely, if nothing else, it is just kind of a pick for signaling, so there's some value there. All right, pack 2, pick 8. Sure enough, we do wield that Godless Shrine, which is very nice for what we're trying to do. And pack 2, pick 9. We also pick up the Legion's Landing on the wheel, so really kind of solidifying us into black-white at this point. We haven't seen almost anything in the way of blue since like pretty early in pack 1. And pack 2, pick 12. Here's an interesting one. Twin Shot Sniper, I think, is a pretty powerful card. But at this point, I'm thinking Sunbaked Canyon might actually be more interesting. So it's fixing. I get to maybe take that away from someone else, but it's also a sack land. This kind of thing works nicely with the Sarah Paragon as well. So yeah, we'll pick up the Canyon and see whether it makes our deck here. And pack 2, pick 11. This time we have kind of a more powerful gold card, in my opinion at least, versus like a less powerful monocolored card. Not really sure what other people in the draft are going to be doing, but in general, I figure it's easier to put a monocolored card into your deck, so we'll pick up the Constrictor here. And pack 2, pick 12, we get a Rip Apart. All right, pack 3, pick 1. So in this pack, not too much that's super interesting for us in terms of like our black-white strategy. There's like a Cathar Commando, which, it's always like fine. It's never anything like you're super excited to pick up, in my opinion, at least in this kind of format. But on the other hand, we do have a strip mine. And that one is going to be very, very nice with the Sarah Paragon. It's just a unique effect. Plays well with like Thoughtseize, for instance. So yeah, strip mine is going to be a nice one. All right, pack 3, pick 2. This time we do have a good pack. Council's Judgment is a very nice removal spell. It's able to get rid of permanents like True Name Nemesis that almost no other removal spell can. That said, we do have Damnation already, so potentially not our only way to answer that one. But we also have a Bitter Blossom in the pack, and we do have like a number of cards that either kind of reward going wide or go wide themselves. And Bitter Blossom is another effect that I think is just really strong. I think it's aged a little bit better than people think it has. And yeah, we avoid kind of another card with multiple pips here. And who knows, the Council's Judgment might just wheel anyway. All right, pack 3, pick 3. This pack doesn't really have a ton for us. There's another sack land, but you know, we didn't pick up the first one very early, so don't think I need to pick up this one very early either. That said, if I think about how that land produces red mana, we have like an Underground Sea that we can play, even and a Colonnade. Even if we are thinking of just being a black-white deck, it seems like Prismatic Ending might be something that we can kind of swing, where our mana can support it, even if we don't actually end up splashing any of those other colors. And pack 3, pick 4, suddenly we see a card that is very much worth splashing in Grist, the Hunger Tide. This is a super powerful one. Some nice synergies with this one and this cube and just interactions. And although something like Rankle would be more on color for us, Grist is just very powerful. I'm thinking about what my mana base is like at this point. I have that pack 1, pick 1 Windswept Heath, and I got that, I think, pack 1, pick 12 Temple Garden. So Grist, yeah, it's going to be on the table here for us. Maybe one more piece of fixing could be pretty nice to allow Grist to work here. Okay, pack 3, pick 5. Well, speaking of nice synergies and picking up Grist, well, Grist is a creature when it's not on the battlefield, and that means you can reanimate it. Reanimate is just another one of those very powerful effects, kind of unique in terms of how little it casts and how much it can do for that casting cost. Nice combo with Thoughtseize once again. Works well with like Sarah Paragon, for instance, or even Smuggler's Copter. And so although there are a couple white cards in the pack that I would like to pick up, can't afford to pass a Reanimate here. All right, pack 3, pick 6. So at this point, there are a couple 3-mana removal effects that I'm interested in, Touch the Spirit Realm and Murderous Rider. And ultimately, I decide I'm going to take the Rider just because it functions at instant speed and it can hit Planeswalkers, whereas Touch the Spirit Realm, I mean, you can do something at instant speed, but it's never interacting with Planeswalkers. There's also not a creature attached to it. And we do have that Witch of the Moors, so, you know, maybe the 2/3 lifelink Murderous Rider ends up mattering. Okay, pack 3, pick 7. So at this point, I believe I took Ayara. Not a card that I am particularly excited about. I really don't know how good this thing is going to be. It, once again, kind of like the Murderous Rider and several other cards I've picked up during the draft, does tax my mana. But it seems like it could be good enough, depending maybe on the matchups, or maybe the card plays better than I think it does. All right, pack 3, pick 8. This is a weird one because I think Brazen Borrower is a very powerful card, and I am like considering hate drafting it here for like a number of seconds, and eventually I just kind of say, maybe I'll just take this Gravecrawler and get enough zombies for it. In hindsight, I do think that hate drafting the Brazen Borrower probably would have made more sense. It seems like hate drafting is something that really does matter a lot in these team drafts of like a vintage cube. All right, in pack 3, pick 9. So we do have our first green card that we are hoping to try to splash. Doesn't mean that I'm going to be looking for another one, though, with Knight of Autumn. It would be really nice if I had taken Lauren or Cathar Commando, kind of have my bases covered in that regard. But instead, I'm just going to be taking Cave of the Frost Dragon. Seems like a card that could potentially improve our deck depending on how we end up building it here. Pack 3, pick 10, we do get Rankle to come all the way back around. Some kind of life gain stuff going on in the pack as well, but that's not really what we are about in this draft. So yeah, Rankle is very nice, and we'll see how it performs for us. Pack 3, pick 11, we do get one of our white creatures back, though it's not the Lauren. We get the Intrepid Adversary. And yeah, this thing, I mean, it's just going to be 2 mana, 3/1 lifelink a bunch of the time, but even that is just like pretty solid. Potentially another reason to consider that Witch of the Moors. Pack 3, pick 12 here, we get an Inverter of Truth. And like I mentioned before, because it is 4 packs of 12, it's now time for pack 4. Alright, so pack 4 here, Fury is a super powerful card in this pack, and I believe that my chat at this point was telling me to like hate draft Fury. There's a Flooded Strand, which is also very tempting. It gets the Temple Garden, gets the Scrubland. I'm not sure whether I was really thinking about Flooded Strand at this point, or kind of how powerful it could be, but I ended up just taking that Thraben Inspector. I think a big part of the pick was just curve considerations, though if I think about the other like white cards that I've wheeled and that kind of thing, it seems reasonable to think that maybe Thraben Inspector would wheel. I'm thinking maybe there's a chance that because Lauren didn't wheel, my evaluation of what could and couldn't wheel maybe changed. But regardless, both cards in that column are very appealing for us, and yeah, we did pick up a Thraben here. Alright, pack 4, pick 12. So this time we're going to be taking some interaction. This time the interactive card we take is going to be pretty unique in its functionality and unexpectedly absent. This is a card that can deal with any type of permanent. You can sink an amount of mana into it, you know, that'll kind of work depending on the situation. You can force your opponent to brick on their draw step if you're presenting lethal for next turn, something like that. So lots of tricks with this card. You can also time it kind of however you want, given that it is an instant. So yeah, really nice card. Happy to pick it up here. All right, and then pack 4, pick 3. We do see kind of a bunch of things going on here for black-white. We have a black-white Triome in the pack. Would have been very nice if I was sticking to the blue plan from the beginning. Black-white gold card in the pack. That said, it's going to be kind of life gain themed, and we're really not sure whether we're doing that. Giver of Runes is a card that I like, especially in the kind of beatdown themed decks, but my deck is much more mid-rangey at this point, looking to kind of grind out some value over the long game. And so for that reason, we're going to be taking Steel Seraph here. Very powerful card. You're going to be casting it for 3 mana much of the time. Kind of works like the 3 mana Gideon that you can use to give abilities, keywords that is, to one of your creatures per turn. We're going to be choosing Flying and Lifelink a lot of the time. Probably not choosing Vigilance very often, but yeah, Steel Seraph is a good one for sure. Alright, pack 4, pick 4. At this point, I believe I ended up taking Duress, so it's interesting because Duress is not a card that I have a ton of respect for in general. For instance, it's not even in my Peasant Cube, even though it easily could be. But I think that Duress in a Vintage Cube, kind of like Thoughtseize, does seem to go up in value and in power level. Wasteland could be another tempting one. I did see bounce lands in this environment, so it could do a lot of work there. But I'm thinking Duress, even if it's not a main deck card, it could be particularly potent out of the sideboard. Alright, pack 4, pick 5. At this point we see Soul Transfer and Hallowed Spirit Keeper, both of which are kind of meh to me in terms of the mana cost, not to mention having multiple pips. Unlike Path to Exile, which is just a nice clean 1 mana, 1 pip. Hellrider and Pia and Kieran in the pack, some cards for maybe an aggressive or mid-rangey red player. But yeah, we are happy to just take that path. And pack 4, pick 6. And so this one, there's Recurring Nightmare here, which is very powerful. Though the kind of deck that we have shaping up so far, I think really likes Blade Splicer. It's tough because there's that nurturing peatland right next to it, and the peatland would be great at trying to enable grist for us. But I think at this point I'm a little bit worried about playables, or at least I want to make sure all my cards are as good as possible, so I will be taking Blade Splicer. Pack 4, pick 7. Here's an interesting one. I'm not really sure what Bloodghast is here to do. Probably some ways to sacrifice it, get value, maybe discard it. Consider taking like Sensei's Divining Top, but I believe I ended up here just taking the Chromatic Star. I don't think it's super likely to make my deck by any means, but can maybe be a way for me to splash green, given that I do only have one green pip that I am planning to run in my entire main deck. Alright, pack 4, pick 8. At this point we see a couple nice cards for our deck come around, one of which is Infernal Grasp. Though at this point we have a lot of interaction. We have Murderous Rider, we have Path, we have Unexpectedly Absent, we have Fatal Push. So I'm thinking I can just take Usher of the Fallen, try to smooth out my curve a little bit more, pick up another 1-drop. And it does work nicely with some of the stuff we picked up like Legion's Landing as well. Alright, to pack 4, pick 9. Weren't really interested in Karlov the first time around, so yeah, we'll take a Collective Brutality. Not sure exactly how good it'll be. We're probably not really benefiting very much from the Escalate allowing me to discard cards, but you know, it's just another solid interactive card, probably more main deckable than Duress. Pack 4, pick 10. We're able to pick up an Urborg here, which is nice. Could be a way to fix our mana a little bit. Pack 4, pick 11. There's a Titania's Command still in the pack, which is super powerful card from the Brothers' War. But for us, we're just going to be taking a Hallowed Spirit Keeper. Might be a card we're interested in. We'll see. In pack 4, pick 12, there's a Mardu Woe Reaper. Alright, so this is how we ended up building the deck. So you can see we did manage to work the Grist into the main deck at the cost of 1 basic forest, which, you know, we do have Path to Exile in our deck. We might even be pathing our own stuff some of the time, so the basic forest isn't necessarily a downside. Didn't really like any of the spells in my sideboard enough to run 17 lands, and given that, you know, my mana situation is a little bit dubious, right, with the basic forest, but also the Strip Mine kind of diluting my colored mana, it did make sense, in my opinion, to try to play 18 lands here. But yeah, overall, I really like what my deck is doing. I think the curve is reasonable. Can imagine Steel Seraph in the 3 slot and the Absent in the 2 slot. And not sure about main decking Damnation. That's kind of like my 20-second spell, if you will. But yeah, let's jump into the matches and see how this deck performs. Alright, so here we are for game 1 of round 1. And this is a nice keepable hand. We have kind of our natural Tron here with Swamp Forest and Windswept Heath. We're going to find Scrubland here, lead on turn 1 Thraben Inspector, and then we have Smuggler's Copter on the way for turn 2. And we now find another double white card. So we're going to be trying to use that Copter to find another white source, try to cast my spells. Unfortunately, we find another double white card, so things are looking pretty clunky here. I believe at this point I just cracked Clue. Oh, I played my land first. Oh, and I got rewarded for it, though, because I left white mana available, and now I get to play Usher of the Fallen. I don't know if I was thinking about tap lands I could draw at the time. I don't think I actually have any. So if I was thinking about it, then good job. And now the opponent has Urza's Saga. They didn't have mana to sack to use Shock with the Pyrite Spellbomb. So presumably that's why they cracked it there, missing colors. And the Saga is available here. We're going to attack with both, offer the trade, the Usher for Karnstruct potentially. And we have Reanimate and we have Sarah Paragon in hand, so we have some powerful stuff going on here. We find the plains, so if we're just going to play this on the level, like one way we could do it would be going like plains Sarah Paragon, but we can have like a more mana efficient turn here if we would like, and get a little bit more value as well. So we actually ditched the Sarah Paragon, which probably should be a little bit scary to the opponent. opponent does not choose to block. Now we're going to reanimate that Serra Paragon. We're going to play Windswept Heath from the graveyard right away. And we also get to make a token with Usher of the Fallen. So nice amount of value there and good use of mana and cards. And the opponent is going to dump a bunch of artifacts into play, mostly using the Urza's Saga. And at this point, we're going to sack our Windswept Heath, grab that Godless Shrine, I think. Tapped. We're going to take some damage for our trouble, but now the time has come for Steel Seraph. The opponent has 8 power over there in artifacts, and it's really quickly and easily able to grow for them. They can equip Skull Clamp, of course, but just any artifact they play is an additional 2 power for them. So I don't love that. I do love that I have Damnation in the back, but Skyclave unfortunately does not get rid of tokens. So here we're going to be using Steel Seraph to gain life, just trying to make sure that we don't get into kind of dangerous territory. That said, the opponent is in dangerous territory themselves here, as they're on 11 life, taking 6 damage in the air. And yeah, we get to, I think we looted away probably our basic planes. Now we get to replay it post-combat with the Serra Paragon. And I think I cast Brutality here with no Escalate. Oh no. Okay, it looks like I went for a Drain too. Probably, what did I pitch here? Maybe Bitter Blossom? No, it looks like I pitched Damnation. I actually don't think that's correct, but, you know, neither here nor there. All right. And then, yeah, we look at their hand, and it's very interesting. So, just like we suspected with the Pyrite Spellbomb, they are missing red mana. There are a ton of red pips in hand. Looks like the mana base just did not quite get there for them this game. And I guess we will be taking an Enlightened Tutor out of the hand. And at this point, yeah, opponent decides to let us go to game 2. All right, so at this point, kind of have an idea of what the opponent is on. I don't remember. I think I made maybe one change in sideboarding, but I don't recall what it was. This is going to be another nice keepable hand for us. The opponent has turn 1 library on the play, so they don't get to activate it right away, but we do have that Strip Mine, which means we get to blow up that library immediately, and we have Serra Paragon, which means we can potentially get rid of the Strip Mine later. So here I just lead on Swamp. I'm not sure about this. I think that it's probably just better to put Windswept Heath into play here, and then just plan on fetching probably Godless Shrine. The plan here is not for me to Fatal Push this. I don't want to give them a card if I don't have to. And the opponent now goes down to 4 cards in hand, plays a Clarion Spirit. Yeah, I really don't want to give them a card with Fatal Push into Esper Sentinel. So now we'll play the Windswept Heath. At this point, we're looking at grabbing just a Scrubland. And I think I decided I just wanted to kill the one that's more expensive here and has more power. So I am going to be killing that Clarion Spirit. I had this idea that if the opponent played 1 spell, then in response to the 1 spell, I could kill the Clarion Spirit if they still had like mana untapped, and it seemed like they'd be able to double spell, so I could deprive them of getting their 1/1 flyer. But the issue is, you know, I can't just take damage willy-nilly all game, so that's going to be our reason for killing the Clarion Spirit now. It is annoying how this forces us to play off curve here, but we did find a nice 3-drop creature to play, and I say those words in that tone because I didn't actually realize that I could also play Grist here without triggering the opponent's Esper Sentinel, because although Grist is absolutely a Planeswalker, in my hand it's a creature, which means Esper Sentinel does not trigger. So I think the better play by a wide margin this turn would have just been forced into Grist. But we do go for the Steel Seraph here, potentially drawing out removal from the opponent. You know, it's not like this line has no merits whatsoever, but I do think the other one was better. Opponent cycles a Triome, which, you know, this kind of thing is going to be a really good sign for me throughout. And then, yeah, at this point I do just play the Grist. I believe I uptick, give a lifelink to the Seraph attack. Yep, and so we have an insect token back to block for the Grist. Opponent is going to revoke Grist, and they have Urza Saga in play once again. But notice that I now have this opportunity to go Serra Paragon and immediately hit my land drop. It's turn 6 because I already used a Strip Mine, but we're going to be effectively using Strip Mine once again here. Unfortunately, the opponent does get Karnstruct number 1 for their trouble, but you know, turning off Karnstruct number 2, not to mention the artifact they would fetch with the Urza Saga, has been just an absolutely stellar performance here from the Strip Mine this game. Opponent, I believe, now attacks Grist for 3. We have no interest in blocking this. You know, we have the Serra Paragon, so Grist being put into the graveyard isn't even necessarily a bad thing if we can just clear the Revoker. We're also at 25 life, so, you know, we're just not super concerned. I think opponent cracks a Canopy land there. And then, yeah, we are... Anyway, yeah, so now we're attacking for 6 once again. Still have that insect token back to block, as it does do so nicely against a 1/1 and a 2/1. And I think at this point, I started by casting a Biomancer. Not sure about this sequence either. And then here I finally decided, like, the opponent's on triple red and a plains, like, they're just not really doing a ton. And Copter is another way to put 3 power onto the board. And it does have flying. And then the funny thing here is, you know, like, if you kill the Steel Seraph, I can then replay it from the graveyard and then give a Biomancer flying. And yeah, if you kill the Paragon, then I can just already give the Biomancer flying. So basically we're setting up for lethal kind of no matter what here, which is a really nice thing about finally deciding to give them a card. Opponent tanks for a while here and then ends up pitch casting Fury. 4 damage to the Serra Paragon makes sense. Of course, we do have Reanimate in hand, which is kind of the sick thing about our position here. And then they are going to fetch Shock down to 5. They have Recurring Nightmare, which is very powerful. Now they get to get back Fury, try to clean up our board a little bit. Skull Clamp here as well, so they get to beef up that Karnstruct. And they're just going to sack it right now, draw 2 cards. And get that Fury back. This makes sense. It's just a little awkward to sack a big Karnstruct, but it's not necessarily doing much blocking anyway. At this point, I decide to create the Copter just in case. It seems like the opponent's tapped out and there's not too much happening. And yeah, so they managed to not be dead on board here, but as soon as I cast that Reanimate, that's all going to change. So I get to, I don't even have to reanimate the Seraph, and it would be kind of sick to do so because we don't get the 3 mana version when we do that. You get the whole 6 mana version of the card, but we get to reanimate here. I even decided at this point I'm going to pay for the Esper Sentinel. We're going to get that Paragon, and then now I'm going to be able to play that Seraph as well for 3 mana from the graveyard, even though it is a 6 mana card, because, you know, when you're casting a prototype, it's almost as if you're casting a different card. So this is a 3 mana value card. And then now here at the end of the game, I'm just trying to figure out what I want to use to crew this Copter, because Copter attacking plus Seraph giving a Biomancer flying is going to win the game for me here. I think the correct answer eventually was to crew using the Seraph, but my opponent ended up scooping before I could actually make a decision because I was very indecisive here. And so yeah, with that, going on to round number 2. All right, here we are for round number 2. And at this point, we get this hand, which, you know, 6 lands and 1 spell is just not going to cut it. And this hand is a ton of gas by comparison. I believe we're getting rid of basic planes here. We'll use our Temple Garden to either get, or whoops, we'll use our Windswept Heath either to get the Temple Garden or to get the Godless Shrine, depending. And we draw the Godless Shrine right away. And note that I've already played out Scrubland, so it didn't work at all like this at the time. So because this is a team draft, you have much more info than normal about, like, how you're going to make decisions. And so normally what I would do here, turn 1, right, the opponent just plays a Triumph, I would just immediately strip mine the Triumph. but one of the people on my team is Opa. Opa's already played against Chris. Chris, as in the owner of this cube, by the way. And Opa has told me that Chris is base red-green and splashing white, and also playing a domain deck. So the main function of the Rafine's Tower here is not actually to generate multiple colors of mana and therefore be a valuable strip mine target. And Opa's also told me that like there are bounce lands in the deck, which, you know, it's a much juicier target for strip mine. So instead, thinking of this as just kind of like domain planes to hit your splash color, I'm thinking, you know, we can just try to hit more impactful lands later. So that's what leads me here to end up playing the Usher turn 1. And immediately it seems like we are rewarded, as there's a breeding pool, which as a green source, it is going to be a juicier one to hit with the strip mine against this opponent. And the opponent has a turn 2 Neshoba Brawler, which is lining up very nicely here against my Fatal Push, so happy about that. And we draw Thoughtseize, which is just amazing, because now Thoughtseize is going to let us make a super informed decision about what we're going to remove from my opponent's hand and which land we're going to remove from their battlefield. So we look at their hand, we see Willowgeist, which to me is like just not a super impactful card, really needs some other stuff going on to make it hum. Porcelain Legionnaire, which is, you know, just 2 mana 3/1 first strike, pretty efficient card in that regard, and a Knight of Autumn. So Knight of Autumn, notably, can only be cast here using that Rafine's Tower as the white source for the splash color, and it's not going to be super appealing for us to strip mine the breeding pool as we suspected, because we do see the Raging Ravine in hand. And so because of this, we're actually going to end up taking that Porcelain Legionnaire and then strip mining that Rafine's Tower, trying to say, okay, you have 2 spells in hand that I care about, but what if I can try to make it so there's only 1? What if I blow up your white source and leave you with that Knight of Autumn in hand, and then just remove the Legionnaire with the Thoughtseize? So that's going to be our game plan here. We are going to be taking some damage for our trouble to do so from the Neshoba Brawler, but we're also shrinking it simultaneously because we did just get rid of that Triumph. So we do take 3 damage here, and we get to just play a tapped Godless Shrine here. We're going to be using Fatal Push. And my thinking at this point was, I don't want to use Fatal Push right away because it might affect which land my opponent develops, like if they try to end up growing their Brawler. And that's exactly what happens here, actually, is they play the Bayou rather than the Raging Ravine that we know is in hand. So it looks like the opponent is prioritizing trying to get in an extra damage, and this rewards us for, you know, I mean, the whole thing just rewards us for our sequence here. And then I think at this point, you know, we've drawn as many lands as we need. I would expect I'm going to be playing Windswept Heath, yep, and then cracking it for Forest. Yep, and then now we just get to Skyclave, hit that Willowgeist. Even though Willowgeist is not something I particularly care about, this is going to allow my Usher to start attacking, and we know that the opponent's not on a lot of gas. They actually cycle a Triumph here, which is just amazing for me, and I'm feeling, you know, very good about how all this is going. And the opponent now has Squee, which is a little bit annoying, and now they develop the Raging Ravine, and it makes a little more sense too why they didn't play the Ravine last turn if they were planning on cycling a Triumph. So here we're just going to attack for 2. No reason to attack with the Usher. We're going to play Temple Garden tapped here, pass the turn. Opponent blocks with Squeeze, so they're just going to be doing this for a bit, kind of gain 2 life for 3 mana over and over. And at this point, yeah, we're just going to continue with the plan here. We're going to develop Bitter Blossom. I'm getting a little bit worried about the Ravine potentially because we do have Unexpectedly Absent, which cannot deal with lands, and Bitter Blossom is going to be losing us some life. So the opponent is going to come in here with the Ravine, but the thing about the Bitter Blossom is it does give us chump blockers as well. And now that the opponent has made this play, we get to attack with the Usher, which means we also get to make a token. So we've drawn Legion's Landing. We have 3 creatures. Unfortunately, one of them is summoning sick, but Legion's Landing is still an amazing draw here as we are continuing to go wide. We get to attack for 4, get to make a token with that Usher, and then the opponent plays a Squee. And none of our creatures have a ton of power, but we do just have a ton of creatures. And so we get to play our land here, and at this point we are really taking over. Looks like I offer the trade with the Usher and the Squee. I flip the Legion's Landing. The opponent accepts the trade, of course. We're going to be firing up the Usher, making another 1/1. Opponent goes to 7 life. We're up to 9. We have Adanto and we have Unexpectedly Absent available. The opponent plays the Squee. The opponent plays Tribal Flames on the Skyclave, and this is one of the really nice things about Skyclaving a 1-drop. They don't get anything super impactful back. Also notable that Tribal Flames is going to be a way of burning me out from 5 life potentially. So that's good to know about for future games. And we just get to make a vampire token here. Gonna continue making other tokens, and we just get to serve with everything here, which is amazing. The opponent is going to block with the Squee, chump block with the Ignoble Hierarch as well. All of this is super good for me. I think at this point I decided I didn't want to play out the Urborg in case it helps their mana somehow. They are a domain deck after all, so you never know. And I think that is the end of the game. So we were just able to make a ton of tokens with Usher, Bitter Blossom, and Adanto, and really go wide. And all of this was possible because, we stranded that Knight of Autumn in hand the entire game by stripping that Rafine's Tower. Thanks to Thoughtseize, the information we got from that in conjunction with the information we got from our teammate. So really, really sweet stuff here. All right, moving on to game number 2 of round 2. So this hand looks awesome. We're going to be keeping. And we get to lead on a tapped shock land here turn 1. Then turn 2, we immediately get to play the Bitter Blossom. Turn 3, we already have at least a couple options. I believe I think I decided to play Blade Splicer here. So I think I went Forest Blade Splicer. Didn't want to develop a Grist into the opponent's Karizev, which with the Ignoble Hierarch 2 is going to be a fairly obnoxious attacker. Opponent's going to use Stomp from Bone Crusher Giant on the 1/1, which I'm pretty happy about because I don't really care about the 1/1 too much. We get to just gain a couple life here, put the Golem on the Ragavan token, take a couple damage. And the opponent now plays the Bone Crusher Giant. And I think at this point, okay, so this happens. I don't remember which land I played here, but I believe I played, some white source and some life will be paid, and I Skyclaved the Karizev. But I guess, Oh, no. Okay, looks like I did this differently, actually. Yeah, looks like I went for the kind of greedier line here, which I do remember this. This is pretty funny, I think, to have gone for this. So I get to actually prioritize my life total here and sort of be mana efficient in a weird way. I get to play Temple Garden tapped this turn. Now I get to play Grist and Downtick on the Karizev. And then the Grist is just going to be really good. I have Bitter Blossom tokens to chump block and keep it alive. I can try to maybe trade my Golem for the Bone Crusher Giant, and even if the Grist does end up getting killed, I'm actually just putting a really powerful 3-mana card into my graveyard for the Serra Paragon for later. So this all does make a little more sense now. And the opponent fires up the Raging Ravine, and so this is very awkward, right? Because they do have that Ignoble Hierarch there for Exalted. And so they get to attack Grist with both, but if they do, it means that we're able to trade our Golem for the Bone Crusher Giant and just chump the Ravine with the Fairy token. If they do it the other way, where they only attack with Bone Crusher Giant, then we can double block. If they do it the other way, where they only attack with Raging Ravine, then we can just chump block. So kind of no matter what the opponent does here, they really don't have a good choice, which is one of the great things about this position for me. Even though we're playing Grist out as fodder here to potentially be, killed. And yeah, I think now that we drew the Rankle, I believe that is going to become the plan. So I think we're going to uptick Grist. Of course we have to. We don't have another option in that regard. And we get to play Rankle here, attack, and we get to force the opponent to lose the Ignoble Hierarch, and we will lose our Insect token. I never want to do any of the like discarding or drawing cards. I don't want to increase the variance of the game in any sense. I just want to affect like what I can already see here and what I'm already working with. Not to mention, like, the opponent did show us a Squee. Opa's told me that they have a Vengevine in their deck, so yeah, discarding seems like a bad choice, and of course drawing does increase variance. So opponent now fires up the Raging Ravine. This is exactly what we want to see here, because it means, like, there's nothing particularly impactful going on. They play a very interesting Mana Crypt with just a Plains available. Really not sure what that represents at this point. And yeah, I mean, the world is our oyster at this point in the game. We get to start by upticking Grist, then we get to go for an attack with Rankle. And I think, oh yeah, okay, so we're going to see Leyline Binding here on, is it on Rankle? Yeah, it is on Rankle, okay. Which is fine. We can't answer that with Skyclave, unfortunately, but we can use Unexpectedly Absent if we want to eventually. Instead, we go for Sarah Paragon here. And sadly, I'm not able to recast Smuggler's Copter. We did mill a Copter, by the way, with Grist. And this turn we milled Urborg, which is nice, which is why we're able to replay that one. But we do get to play an Usher of the Fallen. So opponent goes for some tap on taps here, and they go for a Neshoba Brawler and a Squee. And now we're, yeah, just in amazing shape here. I believe I started this turn by just tapping 2 swamps and replaying the Copter from the graveyard. So if the Sarah Paragon gets killed or whatever, we've already gotten our value. Don't have to worry about that. I believe I just killed both of the opponent's creatures at this point, so we're going to Skyclave the Squee, make sure that sucker doesn't keep coming back over and over. And then I think we're going to downtick Grist, sacking the Fairy Rogue to clear the Neshoba Brawler. Yeah, so just maximizing damage, clearing the opponent's board, getting a big attack in here. Our board is absolutely massive at this point. We get to develop a Thraben Inspector as well. Arguably better to develop the Thraben first to sack to the Grist, blah, 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 whatever. Doesn't really change anything. And yeah, so the opponent wins the flip on the Mana Crypt and scoops here, as we have surmounted quite the board. And now we will be going on to the finals here, round 3 of the team draft. All right, so we have less information about what this player is going to be working with here. And I think I mentioned on my stream when I saw this hand that this is one that I would just snap keep if this were retail limited, but of course, Vintage Cube, I don't think a hand like this is going to cut it. So we are going to end up mulliganing, and this hand is much, much better. One of the awkward things about this hand is that we don't have double white, so I'll get rid of Unexpectedly Absent, and all my spells will be castable. It's pretty nice. Opponent is apparently some kind of blue-red spells deck. I think here I played Plains, and this was supposed to be Windswept Heath, pretty much assuredly fetching the Scrubland. Opponent now passes the turn. So I've been told that there's some kind of blue-red spells deck. Not sure exactly what they're up to, but I want to, interact with them, learn a little bit more about what's going on. And that means I don't want to use the clue this turn. Instead, I will be playing Swamp and using that Collective Brutality to take a look at their hand. Opponent's going to Brainstorm here. So this is interesting because like Brainstorm fetch is you know, a synergy. Like that's the reason they haven't cracked the Bloodstain Mire, right? So they can use these two together. Though at this point, the fetch is awkward. You now kind of can't use it, assuming you want to draw some of the cards you're putting back with the Brainstorm, because presumably the goal of casting Brainstorm in response here is to try to hide instants and sorceries on the top of the library. So there's a lot going on here. We do see a Lightning Axe, a Metamorph, and a Subtlety. So one of the funny things here is it might actually, so presumably there are 2 instants or sorceries on top of the library that have been put back with the Brainstorm. It might have actually been better to put back like a Subtlety, for instance, a card that you know, can be played at instant speed. Try to preserve information at the cost of giving me more options for what to take with this Brutality. But yeah, anyway, we were forced to take the Lightning Axe here. Not the most exciting card to get rid of, but a decent one nonetheless. And so I think at this point, based on how I fetched, it feels like I'm playing Steel Seraph here. Yes, I think I am. I definitely didn't want to play Grist. I've been told the opponent has like 1 counterspell in their deck, and that it's evasive action, kind of the domain-based counter. We get to attack for 1 point of lifelink damage here, and I think my goal with playing the Steel Seraph is to see if I can bait my opponent into just casting the Subtlety here to try to trade. And yeah, so I think, I don't remember whether I attacked with the Thraben Inspector. Looks like I, yeah, give lifelink to the Steel Seraph and kind of conservatively didn't attack with the Thraben Inspector. I don't know if this really matters very much. But here's the interesting thing. So remember I said that it might have been better to put back Subtlety. We know that the opponent, like kind of the one thing that we know about that they're sitting on at this point, and is super hard telegraphed based on, you know, having 4 lands and not having cast any spells, is that Subtlety. So if we're playing Ophiomancer, if we're playing Grist, we are pretty much saying like, hey, look, here's a thing for you to target with Subtlety. So instead, I end up just choosing to crack Clue this turn, just saying, I know the Subtlety is in your hand. You didn't play it and trade with the Steel Seraph. I want to make this thing as awkward as possible for you. And so we just get to crack our Clue, hit our land drop, pass the turn, and we found an enchantment. And remember that Subtlety can only hit creatures or planeswalkers. So the opponent now has 5 mana. They're going to enter the God Eternals on the Steel Seraph. That kind of sucks for me. But one nice thing is we don't think they're going to be like pitch casting Subtlety on Ophiomancer. And so we do just run out the Ophiomancer here. We're going to make a Death Touch Snake on their upkeep, and that's going to stave off their zombie army token. And the opponent is back to passing the turn, which means once again, Subtlety is really, really being telegraphed hard. And we don't know anything else they're up to, so that's the only thing that we're going to think about. So at this point, I make like what I think is a pretty kind of cunning attack. So we want to resolve Wedding Announcement this turn. We have mana for Wedding Announcement plus Unexpectedly Absent for 0. My thinking is, if I attack with the Ophiomancer, we should... Oh, actually, you know, I said this attack was cunning. Maybe it wasn't cunning enough. I think that maybe a better option would have just been attack all here. Then Zombie Army blocks the Ophiomancer. Then we Unexpectedly Absent the Zombie Army. The opponent takes 2 damage, and then we play the Wedding Announcement. So the kind of the question, the awkwardness is like, how can I attack with at least 2 creatures here for the Wedding Announcement so I can draw a card at my end step without like baiting out the Subtlety, losing my Ophiomancer, that kind of thing. So I guess the line that I just mentioned does lose particularly hard to the opponent just casting the Subtlety. Just casting the Subtlety and specifically blocking Zombie Army on Thraben Inspector and Subtlety on Ophiomancer because I really want to use the Absent on the zombie army, and I really don't want to use it on the subtlety. I'm really not sure. It's a little unclear. But yeah, you can see here, the attack that I did end up going for is just attacking with the 2/1 power creatures, thinking that there's close to a 0% chance the opponent will cast Subtlety here, and this means that we get to keep the Thraben Inspector. We do miss a damage relative to the other line, but you know, we increase the chance that the opponent would actually cast the Subtlety if we do it the other way. Though based on how they've been valuing Subtlety and playing with that, it does seem unlikely that they would cast it. Not to mention that they would specifically block a Biomancer. All just kind of interesting stuff to think about. Doesn't make an enormous difference, but okay. And then, yeah, here they go for just a Burst Lightning on the Ophiomancer. And we've drawn our card with the Wedding Announcement, which is kind of the name of the game after all. And yeah, so here we know that they're continuing to rep this Subtlety. At this point, I want to cast my spells. And we do have mana to double spell here, which is also kind of the name of the game. So we finally found a time where we can eliminate this Subtlety from their hand without it being too awkward for us. We're going to put Grist on top of our library, and then we're going to play Skyclave here, and we're going to exile the Subtlety. The opponent goes for an Unholy Heat on the Death Touch token. So, you know, really kind of confusing like what they're up to. Like, why not just kill the the Skyclave? Of course, it makes a little more sense if you think about how they do have Metamorph in hand. That has been very awkward for them this game as well. And so with the Metamorph in hand, now they have a decent target for it. They can target the Skyclave and hit the Wedding Announcement from us. They can also target the Skyclave, hit the Skyclave, so whatever they want to do, they can. They do go for the Wedding Announcement here. And then I redraw Grist. And I think, yeah, we're just going to be down ticking right away, sacking the human token, killing the Skyclave, getting a 3/3 into play. And I think the opponent might have engineered this board state here rather than top decking this card. I think it's possible that they've been sitting on this card the entire time. And although, you know, I haven't been sure about like the opponent's plays, if they like tucked this with the Brainstorm, then like bravo to them for getting to this point in the game, because now suddenly they get to swing things back in their favor big time. The opponent gets to play Burn Down the House and just say, hey, you see everything on your board? It's gone. And so this is a card I saw during the draft, didn't even consider hate drafting, and man, now I kind of wish I had. It's super powerful. And so thinking about this, I eventually decided, well, you know what? The opponent's going to get a 4/4 token for their trouble as soon as the Skyclave leaves the battlefield. I don't really want to path that, give them another land. So instead, what I'll do is I will path my own Skyclave right now, get myself the land. And then, unfortunate, of course, that I not only lose my board here, but also my card in hand. But the opponent's down to 1 card in hand, and now we are sort of at parity. They're down 10 life, but I brick on my draw step. Now they draw a card. And I draw Thoughtseize here, which I am not going to play. My thinking is that it just doesn't really do anything. Like, there's no reason to do it, right? If it's a counterspell, I can just wait. If it's a threat with flash, they'll cast it in response. If it's a removal spell, I can just cast it before I go to play something. So unless it's like specifically like an instant speed like draw spell or something, like, I don't know, the number of like times where it doesn't make the sense to cast the Thoughtseize like greatly outnumbers the times where it does make sense to cast it. So the opponent now goes for a Vendilion Click here. They look at my hand, and of course they're just gonna, you know, let this stay. We now get to play Sunbaked Canyon. We get to sack it. And then we draw Legion's Landing, which is decent. Doesn't quite race the Vendilion Click in terms of life swing 2 to 3, but you know, better than nothing for sure. And then the opponent, unfortunately here, seems to be doing some kind of delving. And sure enough, here comes a big old Murktide Regent. So this one is going to be a problem for us, and it's going to be a big problem. So we get hit for 3 here down to 20, and suddenly we're on a 2-turn clock. We do find Smuggler's Copter off the top, which is pretty enormous. Copter can do one of 2 things for us. It can either block and trade with the Vendilion, or it can chump block the Murktide. And so I decide at this point when the opponent makes this attack that I just want to try to trade for the Vendilion, see if I can then find a removal spell for the Murktide. And so we do get to block here. We get to loot as well. All of this is very nice. So yes, we get to draw a card. And then here, Serra Paragon is like the card I was thinking about at the time. It's the card that I most wanted to see. Because Serra Paragon does give us access to Grist, and then Grist can then cash in that vampire token we have to get rid of the Murktide, and then all of a sudden we're on our way to winning this game. And we know that the opponent has like 1 counterspell in their deck. It's Evasive Action, that domain card. And unfortunately here, I mean, I haven't played this perfectly. I think, you know, there have been some kind of marginal places. I would call them maybe like inaccuracies, places where I could have done things a little bit better, but it hasn't been super harmful. This one I think was a blunder. So what happened here is I just like miscounted the mana situation. Like I didn't really understand. I was thinking about whether I would have enough mana to do everything here. And I have 7 lands in play, which is exactly the number of lands I need to go Serra Paragon into Grist. But I was thinking that I accidentally thought that I needed 8 mana because I was thinking about Serra Paragon plus Thoughtseize plus Grist. But actually, I don't need 8 mana, and if I'm getting rid of the Thoughtseize, I especially don't need 8 mana. So here I tricked myself into looting away the Thoughtseize, unfortunately. And well, we'll see what happens as a result. So the opponent goes for Electrostatic Infantry now. And we now draw a land. So we would have been able to triple spell this turn had we looted away the swamp. And that means that, you know, this would be kind of game over. So now we go Serra Paragon. Note that the domain counter is a taxing one, and that means that we still would have been able to resolve Serra Paragon through it. Grist, on the other hand, we only have 1 mana untapped after playing. So the opponent now goes for the 1 counterspell that we know about that they have in their deck, and all of a sudden we are super punished for our loot last turn. Less than ideal, of course, though it does make the game more interesting. Opponent goes for this attack, and we say, you know what, we just have to block. If they have some kind of burn spell or something to finish off the Serra Paragon, they're going to be able to use that to kill me anyway if I don't block. So I just have to block here if I can. If they can cast a 1 spell at instant speed, then they can turn the infantry into a 3/4. But you know, we just cannot afford to take excess damage, so we do call their bluff here. And then the opponent has Jace Vryn's Prodigy post combat, and now, I mean, it continues to be a really precarious position for us. So we get to go ahead and attack with both. But the opponent with the Jace now gets to flashback, enter the God Eternals. We don't have a choice of killing the Jace with the Grist, of course, because then we will just die to the Murktide. We cannot afford to chump with the Serra. So we do Grist, use that 1/1 lifelink to downtick, kill the Murktide, play our land. Then the opponent's going to flip Jace. They're going to flashback the God Eternals. Serra Paragon is dead. They're going to mill themselves for 4, and they have a Time Walk, and I'm at 5 life, so they can hit me to 1 here. So I'm feeling incredibly dead. The opponent, though, does not have a burn spell. They're going to kill Grist instead of hitting me to 1, which does make sense because if they do it the other way, then Grist is just going to start creating chump blockers for me. Unless, of course, they have some kind of creature or something. And they just have an uptick with Jace. Grist gains me a couple life and it leaves because of the Serra Paragon. And here we draw a Blade Splicer, which is, you know, it's a reasonable draw. We can't actually double block the opponent's 4/4 though because of their Jace. And so we just have to take this damage, saying, sure, like we're dead to a lightning bolt, whatever. Opponent's really low on cards in library. And it feels like we are about to lose. And we draw Rankle. Not a card that I even remembered was in my deck at this point, and I think it had to have been the best draw. So now Rankle just gets to totally solve the problem for us. It's a hasty creature, which means we now have 3 creatures, which means we can flip Legion's Landing. At this point, I did kind of miscalculate what this attack would do. I knew that I needed to clear the Jace, so the Jace couldn't like flash anything back or cause me any further problems. But the thing that I wasn't thinking about is that I won't get a Rankle trigger here, which means I won't be able to clear the opponent's zombie army token on this turn. So we do clear the Jace. We do flip the Adanto. We're not going to make a lifelink token now. We need to do that after the opponent attacks so we don't play into any kind of sorcery speed removal or interaction. And as soon as we get to block here, we know the coast is clear. So once we block, we've done it. So now we get to go ahead and attack here. We'll be attacking with all. I think there was a turn previously where I should have played my land or something like that. I'm going to make the opponent discard a card. I don't think they have any kind of madness stuff or whatever. If they had exactly the like 1 in a red sorcery that like that's like a Chandra's Pyrohelix or Twin Bolt or whatever that madness is to be like a big X damage spell, and I just killed myself with the with the discard trigger, that'd be hilarious. I don't think that card's in the cube. I think it's called Avacyn's Judgment. Anyway, so we get to edict the opponent's zombie army, and then we're left with 2 3/3s on board and an Adanto, and that threatens lethal, and that wins the game. So would have been a much simpler game had we made the correct discard decision with the Smuggler's Copter several turns back. But man, what an epic game. Just a super intense grind. And now we're going to game 2 of round 3. All right, here we are for game 2 of round 3. And we get this hand, which is going to be another nice keep. Love these hands with Natural Tron where I don't even have to worry about my mana that much. And just as I say that, we draw a double black card, and we already have double black. Damnation making an appearance here. Not sure we're going to end up using it, but we do get to put some board presence, or create some board presence here. The opponent has Wasteland, which is also very funny versus my 4 basics situation. They have Arc Trail here. And the opponent now has Sprite Dragon. And yeah, at this point, let's see if I can remember what my plan was. I think at this point I'm leaving up just Murderous Rider and Path and passing the turn. I mean, I'm not playing the double white spells no matter what. But we'll see what the opponent ends up doing. Yes, okay, so here they go for an Unholy Heat. And reminder that I do have 2 double white cards in hand and only 1 white mana. The opponent also has Wasteland, which means if I draw a dual land, they can blow that up, whereas they cannot blow up a basic. So we can path our own Ophiomancer here. We made this play against this opponent last game, but it didn't matter nearly as much. This time, we sort of get to cast our 1 white mana Rampant Growth, which is like pretty big game for us. And then here, I think now that the opponent passed, I probably just played Murderous Rider on this. Or no, okay, I didn't actually. Oh yeah, because I have Skyclave instead that I'm planning to use. And opponent goes through the stop on my draw step, so there's no click. And yeah, now we get to Thoughtseize them. We see this hand, so 4 spells and just a ton of gas here. It's going to be tough to fight through this. I'm thinking about like maybe taking the Lightning Bolt because that can be kind of annoying on the Skyclave. Then I'm thinking about taking the Chandra. But the nice thing about this is it does kind of confirm for me that I am using my, what would you call this? That I am using my Banisher Priest creatures correctly here, because I get to Skyclave here, exile the Sprite Dragon. That's going to be answered either by a Lightning Bolt or a Chandra, and then I have Murderous Rider waiting in the wings to finish off the Planeswalker. And Dig Through Time, while it is scary, isn't like an immediate threat, whereas Burn Down the House is something I'm going to have to think about for the rest of the game, and I just don't want to deal with that. So here we get to go ahead and attack with the Death Toucher, which it's important to do pre-combat when we know the opponent has that Lightning Bolt. Or whoops, I said pre-combat, but I mean, it's important to do before casting the Skyclave. And then now the opponent taps and untaps. I think they're casting a Delve spell here. Yeah. So now, and again, Thoughtsei's just doing an amazing job here, giving me like perfect information and allowing me to make, you know, exactly the kind of choice I want to make. So the opponent goes for Ethereal Forager here, emptying out to their graveyard. And we get to use Unexpectedly Absent on this thing, continuing to hold up the Murderous Rider, which is just so sick for a couple of reasons. So we get to do this, and it's nice and mana efficient, and that's part of why this is so great. But the other thing is now those cards are exiled, which means the opponent is not casting Forager, like it's too expensive, and they're not putting any spells under it. So this works exactly the way we want it to work. We bait the opponent into using the Lightning Bolt here, which... you know, it's not like it's good for us for them to use the Lightning Bolt, but we did kind of anticipate this. And of course, we are holding up Murderous Rider mana. Opponent does go for the Chandra. This is all scripted. They hit Enter the God Eternals, which is also fantastic for us because it means they won't be casting that anytime soon. And then we draw Rankle here. Just kind of a 3/3 haste at this point. We're not going to be discarding when we have Damnation into hand, or in hand, so we just won't be using any of the modes there. The opponent does go for the Wasteland on the duel that we've drawn, and it looks like they are going for Forager once again, which makes sense. And so here comes the Forager, and they have 2 cards under it, and now I get to kind of force them to block here. There's no situation where I can use Brutality here. If I had triple black, maybe, then I could go Brutality to just shrink the Forager, and then end up sacking the Murderous Rider if they let Rankle connect, and if they don't let Rankle connect, they're chumping. But instead, we're just gonna pre-combat the Murderous Rider, and we're just gonna trade, which is perfectly acceptable for us. And now we have Murderous Rider left. And we know that they have Dig Through Time. We top deck Duress, which is even better to use than the Brutality. So the Brutality can do more later, potentially. And then we just have this 2/3 lifelink. It's just going to start crashing in here. We've completely stripped the opponent of their resources. We're pretty much drawing air, but it does not really matter. We have a 2/3 lifelink, and the opponent's life total is dwindling. We play a tapped Temple Garden. And at this point... yeah, so we get to get rid of the opponent's evasive action from hand. They have Snapcaster. I get to reanimate Rankle here, which has Flying and Haste, and then the opponent does not have mana to counter it. They only have 2 land types over there. Blackcleave Cliffs, of course, not actually being a swamp. And so they do go for the Snapcaster, and there's just nothing they can do with it. So that is that. That is our 3060 run here in Chris's Vintage Cube. Deck was absolutely amazing. I think I made a lot of plays that were pretty smart, thanks to the help of my teammates, extra information we got from cards like Thoughtseize. That said, of course, there were a couple inaccuracies along the way, and there was that like one blunder with the Copter loot. But overall, very happy about how this went. I think the deck was really fun, really sweet. Probably would have made a pick or two differently in the draft as well if I could go back and do it over. But yeah, you know, I am ultimately very happy with how this went. Had a lot of fun, and maybe I'll be doing it again soon. Who knows? So yeah, thank you all for watching. Hope you have enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.